Welcome back to Pixel and Grain. Today I'm going to be kind of kickstarting a kind of series where I'm going to be shooting a lot of old vintage cameras that were donated to me by my good mate Paul. He also has a YouTube channel over at Happy Gilder on YouTube. I'll link to his page on the description below. He was very kind to donate a load of cameras to me, turn of the century cameras, little folders. I've actually already shot one of his cameras in a previous video where I shot a Rolleiflex 120 camera, and I went to a 1940s weekend and shot that. That was one of his. So that's something I'm really looking forward to delving into in the future, and experimenting with a bunch of these old cameras and seeing, like, how do they stand up to, our modern lenses and usability. It's just something that's, to me, quite interesting. But today we're going to be looking at this. This is a Baby Rolleiflex, officially known as the Rolleiflex Automat 4x4. It's known as a Baby Rolleiflex because it's a lot smaller than the traditional, or maybe more well-known, the Rolleiflex 6x6 camera. Now this takes 120 medium format film, which looks like this. It's 62mm across, and you get, I don't know, this is just back and paper, but your film would be lined on the back there. Now this is like your standard medium format type film, especially these days, but that wasn't always the case. Now with this camera, it actually uses a film called 127 film, and that's a really interesting format because it's bigger than 35mm, but it's still smaller than 120. Now 127 film looks like this. These really quite small spools, which also have a tab in the top and the bottom. This is what one looks like with the backing paper on, and like any other kind of roll film camera, you load it by inserting the full spool, which kind of would be this one, in the bottom here, and you pull it up and over into the top spool. Now, a little bit of history about this camera, because since getting it, I've really delved into the history of this, and I think it's really interesting. The first Baby Rolleiflex was from the early 30s, I think as early as 31. But this particular model was kind of a revised version which came out in 1957. This grey one, I believe, is one of the most common ones. They also come in black. But the idea was it's a compact twin lens reflex for the kind of prosumer range. So this is like, you're not a professional photographer, but you kind of want this small, compact, very high quality camera. And I guess a professional could have used this if they needed something smaller. We see that today with compact cameras, like the maybe Fujifilm X100 range, or something smaller in that, compared to a big full frame camera. But yeah, it's prosumer orientated, and like I said, it takes this 127 film. Now, another interesting thing about 127 film is it kind of targeted itself towards this a demographic of people who wanted to shoot super slides. Now, super slides are a larger, you may have heard of the slides, they're transparent films, so they're positives, they're not negatives, and you put them in a slide machine and you project them on a wall for a projector screen, usually of your family holidays and all that. I know I've got loads of projector slides in my family from various relatives back from the 50s and 60s. And I think a lot of families did have that kind of, probably someone in their family who was into photography. This would have been like the creme de la creme of your slide-obsessed auntie or uncle, because bigger than 35mm, this 127 film allowed for something called super slides, which is a 4x4 centimeter negative, or positive, I should say, that could fit still within the confines of a standard 35mm slide projector. Now, this being a very well-known brand of camera, the Rolleiflex, known for its very good build quality, and also using the 127 film, it was a very popular camera for those types of people who wanted to shoot that format of film. I've actually got some stats here. There was 67,000 units of the grey model made, and only 5,000 units of the black, so as you can imagine, it's a very, very rare camera to find. And these weren't cheap when they came out either. It says here the initial price was listed at $133, which was in 1957, and that has the purchasing power of $1,500 in today's money. So you're looking at, you're kind of buying a full frame camera these days, right? Like a decent full frame camera. It's an investment. It's not something that someone would have just bought because they needed to take photos of family holidays and they weren't interested in photography. Like, these were high quality tools for someone who needed the kind of control that a camera like this could offer. And production of these cameras went all the way through from 57 up to 63, I believe, where they fully discontinued it, and that was largely due to the decline in popularity of this 127 film. So there's a few little technical specifications for the nerds like me out there. The official designation was the K5, and it shot the 4x4 centimeter frame on 127 film, as I've already said. And much like the 120 version of this camera, you get 12 shots per roll. The viewing lens is a 60mm f2.8, and on this particular model, the actual image lens, or the taking lens, is a 60mm f3.5. So the depth of field you see in the viewfinder will be ever so slightly shallower than it appears on the actual the image that you actually take. This camera actually features an interesting design that really kind of is a product of the time that it was from, and that's with the flash sync down here. There's a small button just down here, and if you press that, you can switch between bulbs for flash or electronic flash. Now, the electronic flash is instant, and the bulb flash actually delays the shutter by hundredth of a second, or not a hundredth, but hundredths of a second, and that's because the bulb needs time to actually activate and actually flash. I can't think of any cameras I have which has the switch that distinguishes between both bulb flashes and electronic. Apart from that, there's no other real features on it. Of course, you got shutter speed and aperture. The aperture goes from, like I said, 3.5 up to 22. And our shutter speeds range from bulb all the way up to 500th of a second, which is very common for leaf shutter cameras. Other than the sports viewfinder, this camera really doesn't feature a whole lot else. Fully mechanical and very nice little camera. But the reason for picking this camera first in this kind of like somewhat series of shooting these old cameras is, other than it being a Rolleiflex, which is a very fun brand of camera to shoot, it's actually to do with this, the film, the 127 film. Now, it's not a dead format. You can still buy it, but it was largely phased out from really sort of like the late 60s to now, and it really fell out of favor with nearly all photographers, to the point where it's almost impossible to find. You can still buy some 127 film. If you go on Analog Wonderland in the UK, there's a brand that's, I think, just cutting existing film down and respooling it as their own, but they're running in around about £20. Now, I didn't spend £20 on this, and as you may see, with the handwritten unexposed on this roll of film I actually created myself. And this video in particular is kind of like a bit of a 2-episode deal, because I've got another video which I'm going to be releasing in just a couple of weeks' time, where I will show you how I made this 127 film, where I created a couple of jigs that cut film, a splicer that cut film, and a jig that helped me load this in the dark, just so I could use not just this 127 camera, but also all of the other 127 cameras that both I've owned beforehand, but also mainly the ones that my mate Paul gave me. So if that sounds interesting and you want to learn how to create 127 film yourself, wait a couple of weeks, or if you're seeing this a couple of weeks past its release date, I'll leave a button around here somewhere and a link in the description to that video. Now, the way this Rolleiflex works is just like the 120 version of it, where you just move this little lever on the bottom, flick up this little catch, and then you can just open the back. And there we can see the back. Now, these Rolleiflex cameras, obviously they're super well made, but this version itself is, I mean, obviously this was like from between 57 and 68, I believe. This version, I don't know the exact date of this version at the moment, but the model was between 57 and 68, and you can kind of really tell the difference in like the quality or the manufacturing process over the one from, say, 1951, which I believe my other Rolleiflex is. And that just comes in like, it comes in to show these like little things here. So there's this really cool little tab which you can just push, and it like pops out the film, like where to load the film. So it's a little bit hard to see in this light, but yeah, if I show you there, push that, you can see that it like kind of pops out. It's awesome. And then that just allows the film to go in between those two little sprockets there, and for you to just simply push the film into place. I guess once you pull that back. There we go. Look how nice and secure that is. And then when you want to get rid of that, you can just pop it out. That's just such a satisfying little snap into place, which you just don't get on those more vintage cameras, I guess. Oh yeah, man. That's so cool, look. And the same for the top. Maybe not quite as nice, but basically once the roll of film is in there, if I can actually do it. And the other, there we go. Then we can see that in there. But equally, when we pull this, it just pops out like that, which is super satisfying as well. So you just pull the little knob, and that just lifts out. So anyway, let's load the camera. So to do that, I'm going to pull off my makeshift little tab just to hold the film shut. I'm going to insert the film into that bottom gate there. Locking that into place, really, really smooth. And then pulling the film up and over. Oh, we need a take-up spool. Why didn't I think of that? Completely forgot about a take-up spool. So push that in there, lock that in place. Just going to insert the tab as per usual into there and start winding. I'm actually going to start winding this before, just because I don't want it to mess up. Pull that across, insert this into there. There we go. That's locked into place. And then we're just going to start winding. Now unfortunately, I've only just realised there's usually a little line as to where to put to wind the film to before you close the back. I don't actually know where that needs to go. I just realised. So I'm just going to wind it a certain amount, say about there, and then I'm going to close the back. And then hopefully, when I start winding this, it's going to stop at frame 1. But we'll see. Let's give it a go. Where's our frame counter? It's not engaging yet. Oh, yeah, I feel the film going through. If you have a look in there, you can actually see we're now at frame 1 and it's stopped. Perfect. I think that might have worked. I heard the film click. If you look at my, watch the previous video where I actually make the film, right at the end where I'm actually attaching the sticky back tape to the film to hold it to the backing paper, I did note that the sides lifted up ever so slightly because I used some expired Tri-X film. So yeah, I think because it was so old it's a little bit more curly than usual. But it feels like it's gone over the rollers fine. We're now at number 1 and we're ready to go out shooting. Thankfully it's a beautiful sunny day, so let's go out and get some shots and see what we can't get. Oh man, it's cold out today. But what I love about this time of year is that just like now, the sun is so low in the sky. I mean, it's what, nearly 3 o'clock, so it's going to be setting in the next hour. But it's probably a good time to be taking some photos because we get a nice contrasty scene. This is kind of standing out to me. It's a nice, relatively, well, it's a very high contrast sort of scene. But the sun is just hitting these silver birch trees. It might make for quite a nice photo. So here I got the Rollei 4x4 with a 127 film. Super excited to shoot this. Now it does have an issue where sometimes when you wind on the film it gets stuck. Not the film gets stuck, but the shutter kind of fires by accident. It needs to be serviced. It's just some old grease in there that's basically holding it up. Hopefully that won't happen. I've got some 400 ISO Tri-X in there. However, it expired in 2007, so it's 18 years old at the moment. So I'm going to give it one extra stop. So I'm going to shoot this at 200. And that way we can try and compensate for a little bit of that loss in sensitivity because it's so old. But it's saying to me 1/25 at 6.3, so we'll go 1/25 at 5.6. We should just give it another third of a stop of light. Oh man, that does look quite cool. Try and get my shadow out of it. 1/25 at 5.6. There we go. This has an interesting locking mechanism on it where once I secure the aperture and the shutter speed, it locks it in place and I can rotate this back and forward. Exposure the same, but just adjust the aperture, well, and the shutter speed. Okay, it fired. It fired. Now, let's see if we have that issue, which you'll be able to see in here. Let's really hope not. No, we're good. So sometimes when I wind it on, the shutter in here just gets stuck open, which will wind on the film and waste a frame. But we can see we're now on number 2. So let's go see what else we can't find. Now, being a 4x4 camera rather than a 6x6, it still has the 1:1 ratio, but obviously it's just 2 centimeters smaller than your 120 film. So I'm guessing that you still get 12 shots per roll. I'm presuming everything is just scaled down. Oh, this is a little bit overgrown since last time. Might have to go back through the woods, which will probably be easier now it's winter. So there's this awesome telegraph pole just over here. Yeah, you got kind of like all this gorse, which is going to be super underexposed against that nice brilliant sky. So what I'm going to try and do is expose for the sky behind it to then make quite a contrasty image. There is a line of trees over at the back, which you might not be able to see from where the camera is, which would be exposed correctly. So what I might do, I'm going to do 2 shots. I'm going to keep the exposure the same, but I'm going to lower the camera on one shot, so it's just sky. So you'll get like this jaggedy silhouette of the gorse plus the telegraph pole, and then it should just be pretty much white. And then I'm going to do another one where I raise the camera up, and then you'll see that little band of trees. For that, I'm probably going to need to actually use the viewfinder and look through it like this to achieve that composition. The trouble with a incident light meter like this is that you can only really meter the light that's in front of you. Now, of course, I'm going to try and expose something that I can't reach. So really I need a spot meter, but I don't have one, so I'm going to keep the settings the same as the light that was hitting that tree. Hopefully that's somewhat similar. Sounds good. Wind it on. The lens flickered a little bit, the shutter, sorry, but it looks okay. I'm now going to push this in like that and clip that down. Actually, I might just have to hold it. There we go. Clip that down. And now that is a sports finder, believe it or not. It's just a hole through the metal. It's actually not anything. I'm going to slightly overcompensate because the lens is on the bottom. Okay. I said to push this one in to release that. Oh, there we go. Cool. And again, just make sure that that doesn't do that thing. Cool. It's good. Right. So we're 3 shots in. It's getting dark. You can already tell that the light level is dropping quite a lot. So I'm going to push on to the next set of woods just over the road. Right, so I've just got to the road before we cross over into that next section of woods. And there's loads of sheep in the field opposite, so I'm just going to grab a shot. We've got the sun kind of coming in from the right, so it's offering like this nice highlight on the sides of the sheep, but I'm probably going to actually have to get over the road to take a picture of this, so I'll see you in a sec. This is saying F9 125, so I'm going to go F8 125. Unfortunately, what's happened is you can see through there that the shutter is stuck open at the moment, which is just letting light constantly leak through. Now this is probably because the oils in this shutter are now really cold. So I'm going to stick this in my jacket, try and warm it up, and go to the next location, and hopefully by then the oils have warmed up enough to for us to use it again.
Unfortunately, even after like 10 minutes of walking and warming the camera up, the oils were still stiff enough where the shutter blades were stuck together, and winding the film on just basically ruined the whole roll of film.
But we can't forget about the fun of it, which is to take the roll of film out, and this is the first roll of 127 I've ever shot, so even though it didn't work properly, still a big moment. Let's have a look. Nice. a nice, neatly rolled film in there. Doesn't look like there's any overlapping. And if we pull this out, you can see that shoots up and we have access to our film. But I'm going to pop it back in the camera because I feel like it's going to be the safest place for it. But still very cool to see.
So you can see exactly what's going on here. Look, after I've taken the front lens off, as I wind on the advanced knob, the shutter just gets stuck open. I presume the shutter mechanism is gunked up itself. And look, the more you kind of keep moving it, it actually starts to loosen up a bit to the point where now it's just free again and it will work for an indefinite amount of time. But definitely needs to be serviced. So now I got it working. I set up a little photo shoot with a very commonly reoccurring person or animal on this channel, which is my dog Daisy. So yeah, with it working, I just set up a little single flash with a nice big softbox, and yeah, just took some photos of Daisy. Here I'm just demonstrating the little switch on the front of the camera, which toggles between bulb and electronic flash. So what you just saw was electronic flash, but if I move this to bulb, you can see that you won't actually see the flash through the aperture. And that's because there's basically a little delay, and the bulbs need time to, I guess, heat up and activate, of which the electronic flash doesn't. So if you do have one of these cameras, make sure that you have it set to electronic flash, otherwise your images will be completely underexposed. So you can see here another view of loading the camera. Just put your empty spool in the top, load your full roll in the bottom. You'll notice that 127 film has these little bits coming out of the top and bottom of the spool, unlike 120, which has a little hole basically. So you clip it in there and pull it up, and just like a 120 camera, you tuck it into the top roll and start advancing the film until, well, you would advance it until there's a little line on a normal roll of 127. But because this is a custom-made roll of 127, I don't necessarily have that line. So I just advanced it ever so slightly, just so I knew it was locked in. Closed the back, and then just kept winding on. The way the film actually sets the counter is by once the film moves across the plane, the camera itself detects the change in thickness of the film. So when it's just the backing paper, it won't activate, but as the backing paper and film start going over that little little button inside, it actually starts to then count the film, which will then allow it to stop at frame 1. Beautiful.
So it seems that the issue has happened again where, oh, it solved itself. So strange. What I think it is the, I guess it's the shutter and the, rather than getting stuck in terms of like you fire it and then it sticks, it's almost like whatever holds the shutter open when you wind it on. So the point where you hear it click, so you might be able to hear like a little click. That's when the shutter is actually cocked. It's almost like there's something inside that's sticking open, so every time you advance the film, it just fires a shot automatically. So it's almost like, I don't even know if it's the aperture blades or the shutter blades as much as it is just a mechanism somewhere inside the camera. But anyway, I think we managed to get a complete roll before the issue started. So let's have a look at opening the back here. Yep, we have a complete roll. There we go. Awesome. Okay, so let's have a little look at the photos from what we've just seen. We'll start with the ones from the first roll. So this was the one where I went out and I went out into the woods, took some photographs, but it was really cold and the shutter got stuck open. So the negatives kind of tell all. Here's the contact print. You can see just how bad it was in terms of what happened. Our first shot is actually pretty good. I'll just get rid of the browser. Our first shot is actually pretty good. Pretty decently exposed. And well, everything but the exposure was fairly good. I noticed the focus was pretty decent and you know everything else worked quite well. But yeah, it was the exposure. So managed to get this one pretty decent. And then you can see this one, the shutter actually got stuck open way too long, to the point where it's nearly completely blown out. And then that third shot where I raised the camera up, similar story, very overexposed. And then you can also see some sort of cast, a line going across here. And then you can also see light bleeding past the gate and bleeding into the rest of the frame, you know. Basically the shutter speed just opened and then very slowly closed, just allowing light to just spill in. In the footage, or at least on the day, I can't remember it sticking on either of those two shots. I think even in the video I said that seemed good, but oh well, obviously it wasn't. And then you can see here the rest of the shots just completely got stuck open. And yeah, we were left with how it ended, whereas basically I just had to keep advancing the shutter, to cock the shutter to try and get it to unstick. But you know, every single time I do that, it advances the roller film. So you kind of waste the roller film every time you do that. Let's have a look at the shots, I guess. So yeah, there's that first one. I quite like it. It turned out basically how I imagined it to look. I can't remember what f-stop I shot that at now, but there's quite a nice little drop off in the background, and it's relatively sharp. It's not great, but it's okay. And then these two were just so horribly overexposed. Another thing with these shots is I shot them on that expired roll of Kodak T-Max or Tri-X. I can't remember what it was now. I think it was Tri-X. And yeah, you can really see some like weird things that may be to do with that. I'm not too sure. Pretty grainy. And then the rest of them, here's just that shot of the trees as I was like racking through trying to get the shutter to work. And the same here with some sky. Now let's have a look at the ones I shot in the house. I kindly requested the help from a very commonly reoccurring character on this channel, which is my dog Daisy. Thanks to her. Yeah, here's the contact print. So the camera by this point had warmed up a little bit, and I also put a bit of alcohol on the lens, sorry, not the lens, the aperture blades, or the shutter blades I should say, and just kept working it to get it to fire. And eventually it started working as it should do. And you can see, look, all these I'm actually really chuffed with. Nicely exposed. And I shot these with flash, so, you know, you'd expect there to not really be any exposure artifacts, you know, as long as the shutter didn't get stuck open for long enough to see any ambient light, we're good. But all in all, I quite like them, you know. We did have one issue here, and let's have a little zoom out, because it's actually in the middle of the frame, sorry, in the middle of the roll, but look, you can see here too, it didn't advance the film enough before it cocked the shutter, so you actually got a slight double exposure here. There's two images overlapping, so that's a little bit odd. And where's that? Can't actually see the frame markers on here, so yeah, anyway, we continued through, and then of course we hit the issue where it started to stick again, and you can see a very flattering image of me looking directly into the lens, just firing the shutter straight at myself, and then bits of like the lounge and stuff. So yeah, not entirely sure. I wanted to put a third roll through this, however, the camera's still being a bit temperamental, and with it still being winter, I just don't think it's best to put another roll through it until I've got it serviced. So yeah. But anyway, looking at the pictures, we can see there is some soft focus. You know, obviously I was trying to focus on Daisy's face. Unfortunately, it focused on over here somewhere. It could have been me. You know, it's a small viewfinder compared to the 120 version, but it could also be that the ground glass and the bellows aren't quite lined up to the point where what you see on that in that top lens is exactly the same as what's being replicated on the bottom lens. So not too sure on that one. But then some other ones, look, I've got some pretty decent focus on here, so maybe it is just me, more than likely. Yeah, and I quite like these photos, you know, they're sort of, there's nice detail in there. And I'd be very happy to, if this camera was reliable, to go out and use this, you know, and actually use 127 film to have that small form factor to then, you know, be able to go out and shoot with that rather than a big bulky 120 version. I would totally take that, you know, and have the trade-off in, a slight trade-off in resolution for this. She looks so cute on that one. She looks like a puppy. So sweet. Yeah, so I mean, obviously just more pictures of Daisy. Now, one thing you may have noticed already is there are quite a lot of scratches on these negatives. I think it's a direct correlation, obviously, between me splicing the film myself. There's probably some bits, while it feels smooth to my fingers, there's probably some tiny little bits which are just still too sharp and is carving a hole or a little channel through the emulsion on the film. So my next step is I'm going to put some backing paper, not backing paper, so I'm going to put some, hey, backing paper isn't a bad shout actually. Be nice and smooth. I'll see. I was going to use either some felt or my fumble with my words. Backing paper is actually pretty decent. It's a very quite thick and smooth paper. I'll give that a go. But I think once I've got that sorted out, it'll get rid of these vertical scratches that are running straight through the frame. But yeah, that's just a little bit of refinement to do. But all in all, not too bad, you know. I'm definitely going to be making those mods to my splicer and shooting more 127 film. And if you're interested in that, stick around, because I've got loads more 127 cameras that I'm looking forward to shooting. I've got little foldy ones, I've got some kind of like Art Deco-y type point and shoots from the 50s. There's a lot going on, and I'm really looking forward to actually shooting some of these old cameras. So if that sounds interesting to you, please consider liking and subscribing. The subscriptions and the likes go so far in helping small channels like Pixel and Grain, getting the word out there, and will allow me to do more of this, because I absolutely love it. You know, it's still a young channel, and I'm really enjoying myself, so I'd love to be able to do more. And I'd also like to give another shout out to my mate Paul, who not only gave me this Baby Rolleiflex camera, but also the 120 version, as well as a ton of other cameras. So he's adding so much content for the channel to go through, so I'm really appreciative of that. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description below, and yeah, please consider going over there and checking him out, and also subscribing to his page, so that'd be great. Anyway, thanks for watching this one. See you in the next one. Cheers. Thanks, Taze.